Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES TV.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, we're used to violence in the news, but this week the reports were especially shocking, including the murder of a musician and a brutal carjacking. All of this happened in a week when a TV investigation showed how easily arrestees are returning to the streets, and the police chief and the DA proposed a joint plan. We'll be looking at these stories as well as a Northshore home building controversy and restaurants caught between COVID and carnival. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources; Lea Zurik, investigative reporter and anchor, Fox 8 News; Roby Chavez, communities correspondent, PBS NewsHour; and Dave Cohen, news director, WWL Radio. All right, we're going to go on over to Dave and stick with Dave right now. And I mean, violence in the city, violent crime, really has people rattled and upset. And we're just seeing these instances more and more.
And understandably so. I mean, I was just looking at the statistics that the Metro Crime Commission released for this week. There have been 111 armed robberies or carjackings as of the beginning of this week, just this year alone already. That's more than 3 a day that the metropolitan area is now averaging for armed robberies and carjackings. And every time we hear about another one, it's another story about another victim who you just, in the middle of the day, in an area where we don't normally see crime. And, you know, one early this morning, a man's driving down the road, a guy's waving for help. He needs help. He's waving him down. The motorist stops. Another guy walks up to the door with a gun and they steal his car. And it's just, every time you think you've heard about how, you know how to protect yourself. If you're at the gas pumps and you got to keep your head on a pivot because someone may come in and try to climb in your door, or may walk up to you with a gun and steal your car, then we hear about another way that the carjackers are now performing their crimes. And it really is alarming how many crimes every day we keep, every day we get at what they call the major offense log from the NOPD. And every day, it's like you think you can't be shocked by what's happened, and every day it's more and more shocking crime.
And Dave, let me ask you, from what we've heard about this in the past, it seems like the people who are doing this are mostly teenagers. And it doesn't seem like evidence of a gang or anything like there used to be. People bringing it to a chop shop or anything, like they just get away and they leave it somewhere. So is this people doing it just to be in a lark, to be doing it?
It appears that it's just a pastime for these teenagers now, that it's just something to do. And I know that study after study after study shows that video games, violent video games, don't lead to violent behavior. But you can't help but notice how much the activity we're seeing with all of these carjackings now so closely resembles the video game Grand Theft Auto, which, by the way, announced today, the newest, latest version of this video game is coming out soon. And in that game, you walk around and hold people at gunpoint and steal their cars. That's the basic premise of the game. And it appears that this has become a game for teenagers now. We asked the police chief and the DA about gang-related activity this week, and they said it's really more just these loosely connected criminals that live in the same neighborhood that get together and commit crimes. And you're right, they're not taking these cars to chop shops. They're not selling them. They're not doing anything but riding around in them for a little while, maybe going and burglarizing other vehicles, maybe committing armed robberies out of the vehicles, but then they ditch them. And typically they're only keeping them a very short period of time, maybe hours, no longer, before they then move on to either steal another vehicle or, I guess, they're done for the day. They go home and come back later and do it all over again.
Dave, you're a reporter. You're the news director there at WWL Radio. You guys directly hear from residents out there, from your listeners. What's your feel on the pulse of the city right now, the mood of the city, and also the leadership of the city?
We have not heard so many New Orleanians say that they don't know if they can stay in New Orleans because of the crime. You got to go back to the 1990s before people were actually talking about crime being the primary reason they were considering leaving the city. You know, we looked at Census Bureau numbers this morning and talked to demographer Greg Rigamer, and over a 3-year period from 2019 to 2022, where we've seen these 400% increases in carjackings, more than 100% increases in murders, all violent crimes up triple digits. The city's lost over 7,000 residents, according to the Census Bureau. During those same 3 years, the crime was skyrocketing. Now, there's no studies that show a direct correlation, but like Rigamer said, it's common sense. If people don't feel safe in a city, they're going to consider leaving. Now, he said some people aren't fortunate enough to have the means to leave, not to have the opportunity to leave, but he said more and more people who can leave are leaving, and if the city doesn't get a handle on this, then that's going to be a trend that we just see continue. Now, leadership did come out this week. The mayor did hold a news conference with the police chief, and she expressed deep concern about the crime problem. She expressed how important it was to support the police department, but there was no actionable plan that she released with the police chief that explained what they're going to do specifically to reduce this violent crime. Now, the mayor then, 2 days later, the police chief had a news conference with the district attorney. They did release a 4-point plan, but it was pretty, for the average consumer of the news, it wasn't, again, anything that made perfect, clear sense on, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to stop crime. They're going to share more data. They're going to communicate better. They're going to work together on initiatives in the future. They're going to focus on violent crime. But it wasn't anything that they said, we're going to do this, and it will immediately lead to a reduction in crime via this. And I think people are very frustrated with the fact that, by and large, it doesn't seem like all of the different parts of the criminal justice system are communicating and working together. The police chief and the DA finally did come out after publicly bickering at one another and hold a news conference together, but you didn't even get the feeling that they were really lockstep, arm in arm together, that they did have a few meetings, they did agree on a few things, and they are presenting a united front publicly now, which cannot hurt by any means.
Right.
But I just don't get the feeling that most people we hear from, most analysts and most citizens, feel like anything that they heard this week is going to lead to immediate reductions in this violent crime that's spiraling out of control.
Well, you know, what we're hearing from citizens, too, is they don't feel protected right now. They feel threatened out there on the street. They don't understand why people who are arrested for these crimes, we find them out in the street again and maybe arrested again fairly soon after that. Let's go on over to Lee right now. That's the story that you had, back on the streets, taking a look at what's called 701 releases, and that's a legal, technical thing. So what did you discover?
All right, so a 701 release essentially is an amount of time that a DA has to file charges against a defendant. And in most felony cases, it's 60 days or 150 days. 60 days for a defendant in jail, and then 150 days for a defendant who is out on bond. And if no charges are typically filed in that time, the defendant is released from jail in 60 days, or if that defendant is not in jail but is out on bond, is released from bond obligations after 150 days. Now, for offenses like a serious like murder or something like that, it's a longer period of time than the 60 days. But what we've found in our story, in our reporting, is that number has gone up significantly in the last year. So typically, Leon Cannizzaro, who is the former DA, had about 130 at most, 130 701 releases each year. And those were, again, defendants released either from jail or from their bond obligations. In Jason Williams' first year as district attorney, it was not around that 130 number, but instead it was 885. And so far through the beginning of this year, we are actually on pace to have about 1,400 701 releases this year.
Why are we seeing such a disparity in these numbers?
Well, I think first of all, it's a philosophy of the DA's office, comparing the Jason Williams philosophy versus the Leon Cannizzaro philosophy. And look, I think when you take a step back and you talk to critics, I think they would say they are not screening cases in a timely manner. So they're not looking over these cases and determining whether to file charges or not. So the cases just essentially they time out. And in some of the cases, the DA does go back and refuse charges or something like that, but they're not getting to a lot of these cases in time. And 29% of these 701 cases are domestic violence cases. And in those cases, typically, when you talk to experts in this area, they say those are the cases you really need to get on right away and stay on. And you're talking about victims who have been traumatized, so you need to invest a lot of time from the beginning and stay with those victims. And if you don't get them within 60 or 150 days, the likelihood of that case panning out is not as strong. So that is one very concerning piece of this whole puzzle as well.
So the data that you all have gathered and taken a look at this, and we're hearing about all of these carjackings, and as everybody's so upset, and we're seeing maybe to some extent a revolving door with people arrested and then back out on the streets and maybe committing those crimes again. Were you able to determine whether or not these 701 releases are related to this at all?
I think it's all related, for sure. And look, we had an example, we said in the story where, someone's arrested last year for, I think it was armed robbery or something. The DA refuses charges. The person arrested again. The DA refuses charges, and then separate charges. And then that all happens in 2020. And then late in 2020, the person is arrested again for carjacking, and the person gets out of jail 60 days later, was literally released from jail just a few weeks ago. So, there's another example we showed in the story where someone was arrested for attempted aggravated armed robbery or aggravated battery and a few other offenses, released from jail after 60 days, goes back on the streets, and about 5 days later, he's wanted for armed robbery and released for that, or charged with that. So there is certainly a revolving door aspect to all of this.
Now, the DA, you had a long interview with him, and he certainly defends his actions and what his office is doing. Also, he said that the Cannizzaro approach was almost blanket acceptance. They're taking closer looks at these individual cases, he says.
Yeah, so he says they are taking closer looks. Cannizzaro, that administration would accept 90% or so of the cases, where they are, taking closer looks and deciding which cases to accept. A critic would say, well, it's taking you too long to do that, and you're not staffing that appropriately to screen these cases and decide whether to charge. It shouldn't take that long to do that.
So what's the next step here, Lee? I know in terms of you guys, are you going to be staying on this and taking a look at these numbers, continuing to inform the public of what's going on?
Yeah, we are. We're going to continue to inform the public and continue to track them and take a look at this aspect of it. Look, when you were talking to Dave, it is the city, there's a lot of crime, and there's a huge increase in crime. People are scared, and there are a lot of moving parts in the criminal justice system, and it's not just because of the police or just because of the DA. There are aspects of every part of the criminal justice system that appear to not be working properly, and we will continue to, raise those questions and ask those questions. And look, it is not an easy fix to any of this, in talking to experts.
Lee, what are you hearing about the judges? There's been a turnover of judges in the last few years, and some of it seems to reflect that whole new so-called progressive movement. Is that affecting all of this?
I think it all plays a part, Errol, certainly. And look, I think to a certain extent, this is what voters did elect. I mean, Jason Williams is different than Leon Cannizzaro. He has a different philosophy on what to charge, how to screen cases, things like that. So, the voters, to a certain extent, did elect some of this. We have a new sheriff coming in, in a few months, Susan Hudson, not Marlon Guzman. She has more of a progressive mindset to the criminal justice system, and voters elected her as well, too. So, these are shocking numbers to a lot of people, but some of this in some cases, is what some of these candidates did campaign on.
And so now we have our city leaders and law enforcement leaders coming together, coming up with strategies, coming up with plans. We have it from the DA and from the police chief, and then also council has something to say about this too. Is that giving the community much confidence, do you think, Lee?
I mean, I don't know. I think the community probably is, scared now, or a lot of the community is scared, where they want to see action and results first. And just on a basic level, there's a shortage of police officers, and that's not something you can fix right away. I mean, you need officers patrolling, you need officers investigating crimes, things like that. So if you don't have the numbers, and your crime numbers are going up, that limits your resources there. So that's certainly one layer of it. We're starting to delve into the resources in the DA's office. Do they have the resources to screen all the cases and prosecute all the cases and things like that? Those are some questions there. There certainly are some quick steps that they can do to try to help this, but there are certainly some longer term, bigger picture pieces to this puzzle that will take some time to fix, if it's, in some cases, fixable.
Well, the staffing crisis is only going to get worse before it gets better. There's really only about 900 NOPD officers working right now. And they're actually budgeted still for 1,600. And City Councilman J.P. Morrell questioned, wait a minute, if we're still paying for 1,600 officers, but there's only 900 actively policing, where is the rest of that money going? And that's going to be a big battle that's shaping up now, because if you take that money away from the NOPD, then if you do at some point ramp up the hiring and are able to start replacing those officers, well, then you have to go and take that money away from wherever you sent it. So there's going to be a huge battle right now over that. And another big battle the mayor did call for this week, the city council to relax or repeal a law that they passed a couple of years ago that limits the use of technologies like facial recognition to fight crime. Well, she says we don't have enough cops to get it done, so we need technological help to battle this surging violent crime. But the ACLU and others are opposed to facial recognition software being used because of reports that it does not work as effectively on African American suspects and can lead more so when dealing with African Americans to false positive identifications and then perhaps prosecutions.
And so I'm going to go over to E right now, because he was going to talk about some of these plans that are coming up, some aspects of it.
Well, there were two sets of plans. There was the council's plan, which is a 4-part plan, and then later in the day, yesterday, the 4-part plan was the police chief and the DA, and then later in the day, the council came out with an 8-part plan. I got to tell you, you look through these plans, and they're kind of really, like Dave says, they're hard to decipher. It's a lot of consolidations and moving things around and data collection, that sort of thing. There's not the thing you're looking for on how to stop crime. It reminds me about a guy who ran for mayor one time and said, vote for me, I'm going to put a cop on every block. That people understood, okay? It may not have been realistic, but it was certainly something that people could hold on to. And so where all this goes, I don't know. It seems like if you try to boil all this down, the consensus is that there are some units that they've had in the past that were like combination units that were doing specific work that for various reasons were disbanded, that they're going to try to put together again, concentrating especially on violent crime and bringing in like other agencies and other law enforcement agencies. And so it seems to be going that way. There was talk about, of course, how all this can be paid for, and we don't know. One councilman did point out that there should be an audit in areas that they should look at, but include the police chief, of course, the court system, NORD, and the mayor's office for dealing with youth matters. All of these deal sort of directly or indirectly with crime, and is there any way that the money should be moved around? I want to mention, I was reading all this and I was thinking, gee, if only there was like somebody in the nation, like some figure out there, who could be like the Paw figure and say, do this or do that. And it doesn't exist right now. However, something I noticed that's interesting is that President Biden yesterday spent a lot of time in New York. And I think a person who could be really important in what happens nationally is a guy named Eric Adams, who's the new mayor of New York, who's black and a former police chief. and who says as a kid he was beaten up by New York police, but he joined the police and rose to the ranks. And he is more of that mainstream, middle of the road, because there's a real philosophical divide in crime right now, and it's going two different directions. And I think he's the guy who can pull the Democratic side a little bit more back to the right, which is where the public is right now, because the public isn't really supporting the other side.
All right, well, we shall see. Thanks, E. Robbie, let's go on over to you right now and get away from crime for a bit, but still talk about a real big problem, which has been COVID facing us. And also now the city of New Orleans, vaccine mandates 5 and above. You have to have proof of vaccine or a negative test to get into restaurants, other venues. You did a piece about this and how it's impacting these restaurants and businesses.
Yeah, so the expanded vaccine mandates for businesses, you have to be anyone 5 years or older has to be fully vaccinated. That includes anyone participating in the carnival cruise or the marching parades. And so there has been a bit of opposition to that because the mayor has been an outlier in this area because a lot of the surrounding areas do not have these kind of health mandates in place. As soon as these mandates went into effect this week, there was a lawsuit that was filed pushing back against the mayor, saying they don't have jurisdiction to put these kind of health mandates in place. And so that lawsuit hopes to kind of put an injunction on this. But for now, we've not heard from the court system. As far as the city is concerned, they came out very quickly and said that these guidelines will stay in place all the way through Mardi Gras, that if we wanted to have Mardi Gras, then we had to have these mandates in place. In fact, Health Director Jennifer Avegno told us very clearly and sent this sobering message to folks that if you're coming to the city and if you want to do something, you have to have a vaccine or one of these tests, or else there will be no fun for you. Of course, those are really hard words for these restaurants to hear because they have been struggling for the last 2 years. You know, it's a lesser of two evils for them because last year at this time, they were being shut down. They were being severely limited in their capacity. And so now they're kind of being put in the middle here to enforce these mandates. They don't like it. They, in many cases, have to turn people away to the outlying areas that don't have these mandates. We spoke with the Louisiana Restaurant Association. 1 in 5 restaurants during the pandemic have shut down. So it's completely changed the way that they do business. A lot of them have fewer hours that they operate, even fewer days. They've changed their menus. They've had to reduce the amount of staff that they have. The city has been pretty lenient in understanding that these restaurants are kind of caught in the middle. We checked with code enforcement. We understand that there were 5,000 complaints for people not enforcing these mandates. So the city went out and checked out about 250 of these restaurants, and they found only 10% of them to be non-compliant. But the city's very quick to say, hey, we're not shutting anyone down like we did last year. We're not imposing fines. We're going in. We're trying to help these restaurants understand these health mandates and to give them assistance where needed.
Though the city is saying, and with this mandate, though, they're telling these businesses, if you don't comply, this could happen to you. There's even permit removal, but the city really isn't doing that?
Yeah, so it's a lot different than what we've seen last year. Last year, we saw a lot of shutdowns. We saw them come in and impose really strict restrictions as soon as the numbers started to climb. Now, whether or not these restrictions are having an impact, we have seen that the number of people vaccinated in the city has improved. We now have some 85% of adults fully vaccinated. From the time that these mandates started in mid-December for kids 5 and older, that number has grown to some 72% now fully vaccinated. And then if you look at our test positive rate, back at the beginning of January, that was up way at 32%. It's now down to 8%. And so it could be that the virus is cycling through the city, but these mandates may be helping as well, or maybe just a combination of them. One way or the other, the city has said this is necessary if we want to have Mardi Gras, if we want to move forward with Carnival this season.
And the suit was filed earlier this week, but we haven't seen any court action yet.
No court action. It's been assigned, but it will be in state court. The folks who have filed this have lost a number of cases in federal court, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not they get any relief in a state court.
Okay, Robbie, thanks a lot. Quickly now on over to Dave, just for a real quick quick discussion about Northshore housing and what they sort of intend to do over there, or at least the leader's hoping.
Yeah, if you've spent any time north of the lake, you can't help but notice there are new subdivisions everywhere you turn. From St. Tammany to Tangipahoa to Livingston Parish, there's just massive new sprawling home building going on. Well, in St. Tammany Parish, it's not hard to see that the problem is there are too many people, and there's not enough infrastructure to support it. And so the parish president, Mike Cooper, this week began a public campaign for what he's calling a density moratorium. He wants to outlaw the building of any new subdivisions unless it is one home per acre. He said they're running out of road space. You can't go anywhere anymore because it's always traffic jams in St. Tammany Parish. He says the drainage is not adequate as they continue to gobble up land and put houses on it. And he says they're going to run into problems with delivering water and taking sewer away from homes because the system's just not built for the massive number of new homes and all of the people now living in St. Tammany Parish. He's got to put it before the parish council. There will be public hearings, and sometime next month we expect this to come to a vote.
Oh, that soon, really? Just about a month worth of talk about this?
That's what it looks like. He wants to fast track it because there are so many land developments underway that they need to have this safety, he says, to be able to deny permits to build homes that are on less than 1 acre each.
All righty. Thanks a lot, Dave. Time for other stories. E, over to you real quick.
Well, we've already seen the route of carnival parades shortened because of a manpower shortage among the police. Today, the crew of Chewbacca's, which is a good parade tomorrow, got shortened once more, and they really had 11 blocks chopped off. So they're going to mostly go to the French Quarter. But the point is that this is another example. The reason is because they just weren't enough police. This is the issue of the future. Even if by next year, if COVID is not an issue, this will be. So it's something we need to think about.
All right, thanks, E. Lee, over to you.
You think the number 885 was bad with the 701 releases coming up next week? We're going to delve into some things more and some numbers that might startle you even more.
All right, we'll be looking for that. Roby, over to you.
Well, in the PBS NewsHour, we're looking at the number of Afghanistan residents who are relocating to the Baton Rouge and New Orleans area and touching base with the nonprofits that are helping.
Okay, we're definitely looking for that too. Dave.
Well, sports betting went mobile in the past week in Louisiana, and the Super Bowl is next week. We're going to be watching to see just how much money people in Louisiana wager on the Super Bowl and how much more on the biggest betting event of the year, the Final Four, which is here in New Orleans.
All righty, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for joining us, too. And, of course, we will see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening. Thanks, guys.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES TV.